By the second half of October 1942, a stalemate had developed around Guadalcanal. On land, the Japanese blocked the American bridgehead, but could not capture it. Thanks to this, American aircraft from the Henderson Field airfield continued to dominate the air. However, the Americans did not have enough forces to control the sea around the island, especially at night. Thus, a naval battle became inevitable. The only question was when and at what balance of forces it would occur. Admiral Yamamoto was losing precious time, but did not know it. New offensive on Guadalcanal. On October 23, 1942, Japanese forces on Guadalcanal launched a new offensive against the American defensive perimeter around Lunga Point. Due to heavy rains, the Henderson Field airfield was wet, and there was low clouds over the sea, so the Japanese sailors were able to operate actively during the day. On October 25, a detachment of 3 Japanese destroyers fired on American ships at Lunga Point, sinking the ocean tug Seminole, and then entered Tulagi Harbor and carried out a pogrom there. In the evening of the same day, another convoy of destroyers with soldiers and supplies left Choiseul. It was assumed that it would reach Guadalcanal on the morning of the 26th. After unloading, the destroyers were supposed to provide fire support to the ground forces. Japanese forces. Yamamoto again divided his forces into 2 formations under the leadership of Admirals Nagumo and Kondo. The first commanded the 3rd Fleet, whose main striking force was aircraft carriers. The second Fleet, whose main striking force was battleships. The new battleships were defending on Truk, and Yamamoto was not yet willing to throw them into battle. He himself remained on Truk aboard the Yamato. Kondo's main task was to provide support to the troops on Guadalcanal and impose an artillery battle on the Americans. Nagumo's force patrolled to the east to cover Kondo's ships with fighters and, if possible, engage enemy aircraft carriers. Finally, his task included attacks on American transports in the event of an attempt to evacuate Guadalcanal. In addition, if necessary, the forces of Admiral Mikawa's 8th Fleet were to enter the battle. By this time, personnel changes had occurred in the command of American naval forces in the South Pacific. For indecision and pessimism, Nimitz removed Admiral Wormley and on October 18 appointed Vice Admiral William Halsey, nicknamed Buffalo, for his activity and aggressiveness in his place. Halsey's headquarters were located in Numa on New Caledonia, but at first he had at his disposal only one task force, formed around the aircraft carrier Hornet. Another aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, damaged in the Battle of the Eastern Solomon Islands, was hastily completing repairs at Pearl Harbor. Unverified report. Beginning on October 16, Japanese reconnaissance lost enemy carriers in the area. However, since the early 20s, an increase in American aerial reconnaissance activity was noted. Yamamoto's headquarters had a suspicion that the enemy was preparing for something. Finally, on October 24, Japanese aerial reconnaissance was able to intercept and decipher an enemy radio message that mentioned a major naval and air battle expected in the near future in the Solomon Islands area. On the morning of October 25, Yamamoto informed General Hyakutake on Guadalcanal that if Henderson Field was not captured by evening, the Japanese fleet would return to Truk due to fuel shortages. Finally, the Lunga perimeter was broken through. A group of soldiers led by Colonel Furumiya reached the southern part of the airfield, after which the naval liaison officer on Guadalcanal reported that the airfield had been captured. At night, this report was received on Truk, and Yamamoto ordered the ships to move south. The group of Japanese that broke through to the airfield turned out to be small. It was quickly isolated and destroyed. Early in the morning of October 26, Japanese naval fighters appeared over the airfield, waiting for a signal to land, but were attacked by American aircraft and suffered heavy losses. However, the Japanese force had already moved south. Admiral Halsey's concern. In turn, Admiral Halsey found himself in a very difficult situation. At the time of taking office, he had only one aircraft carrier and one battleship. Over the past 2 months, the South Pacific Fleet has lost 3 attack aircraft carriers and a battleship sunk or damaged. Even the victory at Cape Esperance disabled 2 cruisers. The Pacific Fleet Command concluded that the Japanese were somewhere northeast of the Solomon Islands and would strike on October 23. On this day, the suspicions were confirmed. The Catalina patrols actually discovered an enemy aircraft carrier 650 miles north of Espiritu Santo. The Japanese forces were estimated at 4 aircraft carriers. Even earlier, intelligence reported that 1 aircraft carrier had gone to truck. It was a light Hi-O from Kondo's subordinate 2nd Aircraft Carrier Division, which had an accident in its vehicle on October 22. The Japanese still outnumbered the enemy in number of ships. However, their old battle cruisers, in fact, were a kind of leaders of heavy cruisers and did not have a chance to resist the American battleships that had just entered service. In addition, the light aircraft carriers Zuiho and Zunyo were converted from a submarine mothership and a fast liner, and therefore had insufficient protection and speed within 25 knots. The squadrons are moving towards each other. On October 24 at 12:45, the Enterprise and Hornet groups met northeast of the New Hebrides. By order of Nimitz, Admiral Kinkaid took command of both groups. He was to pass east of the Santa Cruz Islands, around them from the north, and then move southwest to San Cristobal Island, the southernmost island in the Solomon Islands chain, to intercept the Japanese as they approached Guadalcanal. Meanwhile, Admiral Lee with the battleship Washington headed to Guadalcanal for a search and on the night of October 25 bypassed Savo Island. However, it was not possible to repeat the success of Admiral Scott at Cape Esperance. It was at this time that the Japanese decided to operate here not at night, but during the day. As a result, the enemy was not detected, and by morning the 64th Operational Group left dangerous waters to avoid being attacked by Japanese aircraft. At 4 o'clock, east of the Santa Cruz Islands, Kinkaid's ships turned to the northwest, and Enterprise scrambled its air patrol fighters on duty. The morning search on October 25 at a distance of 200 miles did not yield any results. Moreover, due to thick clouds and periodic rain squalls, American aerial reconnaissance lost contact with the enemy. Unsuccessful searches. The ships discovered by the Catalinas at noon on October 25 belonged to Admiral Nagumo's 3rd Fleet. As in the Battle of the Eastern Solomon Islands, Nagumo positioned his carrier strike force in the rearguard, pushing the battleships of Abe's advance force 60 miles forward. He hoped that American carrier aircraft would attack them rather than the carriers. The Americans have not yet discovered the vanguard formation of Admiral Kondo, heading to Guadalcanal to the west, past the island of Maleda. The Japanese also knew from their submarines and base reconnaissance officers of the 25th Air Flotilla from Shortland Island that the American formation was located eastern Rennell Island and north of the Santa Cruz Archipelago. However, this information was fragmentary, and most importantly, Yamamoto's headquarters on Truk did not yet know that the Enterprise had returned to the battle area literally the day before. However, American scouts spotted the Japanese ships, and to deceive the enemy, Nagumo turned his aircraft carriers on a reverse course, while the battleships continued to move south for some time. At 2:30 p.m., Enterprise sent out 6 pairs of scouts to search 200 miles ahead. About an hour later, Kinkaid ordered a strike group of 29 aircraft, 11 fighters, 12 reconnaissance aircraft, and 6 torpedo bombers to be scrambled into the air. These aircraft were ordered to follow the median search line 150 miles ahead and return if no enemy ships were found. The Hornet aircraft were still on site, ready for the enemy to appear. Alas, it was not possible to find the enemy. Both Nagumo detachments had by this time left the range of action of the deck vehicles. As a result, the strike group returned to the Enterprise after sunset on the last drops of fuel. 6 planes fell into the water or crashed while landing. Earlier that same day, Enterprise lost 5 aircraft as a result of accidents and damage. Thus, even before the battle began, the Americans lost 11 aircraft. At about 0:50, an American flying boat from the darkness rained a series of bombs onto the Nagumo compound, which exploded at the side of the Zuikaku. There were no casualties, but the bombs fell so close that smoke from the explosions enveloped the bridge. Nagumo decided that he had been discovered and was walking into a trap. So at 1 in the morning, he again deployed his strike force to the north. An hour later, Abe's battleships also turned around on the opposite course. At this point, the ships were approximately 250 miles northeast of Guadalcanal.